if there was any evidence that the U.S. charges against Julian Assange were charges having to do with legitimate journalistic activity, I would be raising holy hell in defense of Julian Assange. If it even looked to me like this was the beginning of going down that road, I mean, I'm in the media business. I don't want the government, controlling or regulating the media, period. And I have reported stories on this program that were told to me in confidence by other people, certainly, with the goal that they would be reported. I don't frankly know if any of them violated, secrecy laws and things like that. But certainly, the New York Times and the Washington Post have regularly published things that were stolen, that were leaked. That's routine journalism. And that's what WikiLeaks was doing initially. But to have the head of essentially the publisher, it would be the equivalent of the publisher of the New York Times, reaching out to a source and saying, let me help you crack a password. That's a different thing than thank you for the information. Now, there are some people who are suggesting that Assange is being, basically busted for corresponding with Chelsea Manning. There's nothing wrong with that. It is absolutely normal for reporters and sources to talk, and for reporters to even encourage sources. People are saying, well, Julian Assange said, in my opinion, the curious eye is never dry, or whatever the phrase was, In other words, there's probably more information that you can get for me. That's not illegal, and that, again, is not what he's being charged with. And it concerns me when I see news stories that report that as if it was bad, because it's not. Now, with regard to Julian Assange conspiring with Don Jr. to maximize the impact on behalf of Donald Trump in the elections, the WikiLeaks, and presumably it's Julian Assange. This is a WikiLeaks account corresponding with Don Jr. It's not specifically Julian Assange. We just don't know. But apropos of that, that is not illegal. That's not a crime. What it does tell us is that, WikiLeaks was very interested in the outcome of the election and was aggressively and actively working with Don Jr. and presumably others in the Trump campaign to damage Hillary Clinton. And they were quite successful in that, by the way. I mean, just threw the DNC into chaos by releasing those stories the first day of the Democratic National Convention, releasing Hillary's emails. The day that Access Hollywood comes out, releasing John Podesta's emails, changing the narrative of the news cycle. These are things that could have been decisive in the election, but they're not illegal. And, even reaching out to Don Jr. and saying, hey, we're going to dump this information. In my mind, that's not illegal. In fact, I would not be surprised if news outlets, particularly highly partisan news outlets, like Fox News, for example, or maybe even MSNBC, regularly correspond with or try to time stories or whatever to help the politicians that they like. That's not illegal. And if we criminalize that, we are walking into some really, really dangerous territory. We can be pissed off that WikiLeaks was corresponding with Don Jr., telling him when these dumps were coming, helping him out, advising him specifically on what to tweet and how to get the word out. We can be pissed off about that, but you don't put people in jail for that, to the best of my knowledge. Which is why this information has been out. I mean, the story that I read to you from Julia Yaffe was from 2017. It was from 2 years ago. And it's why Don Jr. isn't in jail. It's not against the law. It's ugly. It's terrible, ugly politics, but it's not against the law. So let's just be really clear about what's going on here. And as long as, and by the way, once there's this doctrine of, I'm forgetting the word, purity is the word that comes to mind, and that's not the word. But it's this doctrine that says that basically, and I think where this comes from is that there's a bunch of countries in the world that don't have the death penalty. In fact, I think there's only like 10 or 12 countries now that still have the death penalty. You know, us and North Korea and Saudi Arabia. There's just a few. And so there's a lot of countries that if we've got a warrant for the arrest of somebody who has committed murder, they will not send that person back to the United States if that person will face the death penalty, even if they have an extradition treaty with the United States. So what this doctrine, this treaty doctrine says is, whatever you charge somebody with, when you request extradition, when you request us to arrest them and send them to your country, whatever you charge them with, you may not add to those charges unless they commit further crimes when they get to your country. So if Julian Assange came to the United States and got out on bail and broke into a bank or something, then, you know, he could be charged with bank robbery. But unless they, you know, unless they commit another crime after they've, you know, arrived in the new country to which they were extradited, you cannot add charges. So, you know, barring any additional charges being put against Julian Assange before he's brought to the United States, and we've seen no indication that there's more charges coming, he's going to be charged with trying to hack a password or helping to hack a password. He's not going to be charged with encouraging a source, and he shouldn't be. That's a normal part of journalism. He's not going to be charged with colluding with the Trump campaign, as disgusting as that may be. That's a normal part, or at least that's not illegal. I wouldn't say it's a normal part of journalism, but it's not uncommon. I mean, going back to the founding of the Republic, there were newspapers that supported John Adams, and there were newspapers that supported Thomas Jefferson in 1800. And yes, they were talking to John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. They're publishers. We've got the correspondence. So that's not illegal. It's pretty gross, but it's not illegal.